I started around 50 years ago, I guess, on a show called Time for Beany with Stan Freberg and Dawes Butler. Black and white, 7-inch screen, unheard of anything like videotape or color. It's when people used to drive down the street and see an aerial on a house. Oh, they have television. So we did the show live every day, working in a trench with little small puppets. It was Beany and Cecil, the C6 sea serpent, that Bob Clampett had created on KTLA Channel 5. And we did that for, quite a number of years. Then I had my own show for like 12, 13 years, the Walker Edmiston show on KTLA and Channel 5, and I created my own characters. There was Arkwright Ravenswood, the buzzard, and Kingsley the lion, the happy-go-lucky lion, and Barky the dog from back down home. He's from a poke in a plum town. If you're driving through, you poke your head out the car window, you're plumb out of town. So I had a complete cast of characters in an old theater just down the street and around the corner from where you live. And then it was like Disneyland or a world of our own. We could do any kind of adventures in an old theater. We had costumes, we had an old projector so we could run old films, we had an old piano. I did a lot of music and everything. And I was on, as I say, either 13 or 14 years with that show. And I also went over to Phoenix for a year and did it there, and then came back to KTLA. And then after that, then the Krofft show appeared. And it was strange because I guess we had the same tax man or lawyer or something, and he had been telling Sid and Marty about one of his clients, Walker Edmiston. Yeah, right. No, Walker did a lot of puppets, and they, Well, finally, they interviewed me. And so then I didn't have to do any manipulation or anything anymore. We just did voices and all of the Krofft shows. First there was H.R. Pufnstuf, and I did several of the characters. I did Professor Blinky, you know, he's a wild old owl, and several of the other characters in that. And then we moved on to other shows. There was Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, and famous little guy, known and loved, Billy Barty. He wore the suit, as many of the other little people. And Sigmund was a little octopus found on the beach. And so he was kind of pitiful, cute but pitiful. So I did a little voice kind of like that, kind of helpless, you know, so-and-so. And then his family, there was Big Daddy, who was kind of an Archie Bunker. Sigmund, where are yous? And then there was Slurp and Slurp. Oh, Big Daddy, we can't find him nowhere. So that basically was the early part of my career. Well, I got onto the Land of the Lost just because I had been working for the Kroffts for such a long time. And they called me in and said, oh, we have a character, you're on camera, but you'll never be seen. And I said, could you explain that? And they said, well, you wear it's kind of a lizard costume. I do. Okay, well, work is work. You know, I'm in Hollywood, I'm in showbiz. This is rocket to stardom. I'm gonna be my big chance. So I said, well, sure. So I worked with Mike Westmore, you all know from Star Trek and everything, and went up to his house. And Enik's costume was on a wetsuit, a black skin diver's wetsuit. And I tried it on and everything. And then he sculpted the scales in clay, made a plaster cast, put them in the oven, cooked the rubber, then laid the suit down on the floor and glued all of the scales on. Then I go to put the suit on. Well, now it doesn't stretch anymore because it's all glued with this rubber, and I couldn't. I was like Quasimodo. I said, Mike, I can't stand up. I'm stuck. Ah. Oh, well, we got to figure out something so that I could get it. So we took the trusty knife and started slitting the suit, making big slices in it so I could breathe, so I could straighten up. because it was too late. I mean, we're under the gun now, you know, and so we didn't have time to start over again. So that's why Enik wears that orange costume to cover all those slices, and at least it let a little bit of air in, because the suits were terrible. Can you imagine under those hot studio lights in that rubber suit? Actually, after a few hours filming under those lights, I could pull the sleeve out and the perspiration would half fill a coffee cup. And at one point, after, you know, we'd been doing the shows, and there's no way you could take it off. Once you put it on, that was it for the whole day, 8, 10 hours, whatever. So I could take the head off, and they would unzip it and lay it down, and I could breathe. But then couldn't take the arms off because you couldn't get them back on. So then they'd zip me up and put the head back on. And recording, they had a real problem trying to figure out how to record Enik's voice. Because I was talking like that, you couldn't hear anything because of the suit. Now, we did cut a lot of the rubber away to put it in my chin, so he would have some mouth action. So sound men finally figured out, hang the little tiny microphone like this one in the bridge of my nose on a band, on a headband. Then I started to speak, and he said, "Walker, you." It started to cycle. So that's where Enik got his voice. Very soft. When Enik spoke, his voice was very soft, and therefore it gave it that resonant sound that he had. So, and I did many other voices on the show, of course, too. But the one show I did, people did get to kind of see me a little bit, was a show called Downstream, where I played a really wild old Southern cannoneer. He's a Civil War guy trapped down in this cave, and he drank fermented fish juice and something else, and he was crackers. He was like 9,500 years old, and he had this big old cannon. So that was Cali, and that showed Downstream. So finally I got to do a live show with the other humans. So, but he was quite a character. Unfortunately, there wasn't much makeup. It was costume. So we'd get there like 6:30 or so in the morning and get out. There was only one Enik costume, so they had to dry it out. And they would put fans in it and everything to dry it out for the next day. And then, as you know, pulling on that wetsuit with those scales, and then the feet, it had funny feet too. And the hands, I worked on the hands with Mike, because you'll notice the other slee stack, they have like 2 clamshell like claws. Well, we figured Enik had to do things. So I sculpted the hands so that you could put the fingers in like that. So he had 3-fingered hands, which worked. So then you put those on. Now you're hermetically sealed, ready for the showbiz. So on set, ready for Enik. So I would come out in my outfit and my orange shirt and my helmet and my voice. But I could not see, the eyes were red plastic. 2 big cutout red plastic. Well, any kids out there who've ever gone out for Halloween in a rubber mask, pretty soon you can't see. It all steams up because the matter of breathing, and to breathe goes up into the eyes and steams them up. So a lot of the dialogue they would put on cards, well, it was useless because I couldn't see them. I could just barely see Wesley or some of the other characters. I see these figures moving around. So, so I had to memorize all the dialogue, just like all the other actors in show business. I had to memorize everything. And then, many times walking, as you're aware now, everybody knows about special effects, but back then, most of the kids watching and some of the adults, they weren't aware of all this magic that we were doing. We were working against a green screen, so when we had to walk a certain path, they would lay poker chips down, painted the same color, and so you couldn't see them. Now, you look over on the monitor, there we are, walking through the jungle or wherever it was, or across the sand. Well, we were walking across the stage, so we could feel that on our feet, so we knew exactly where to walk. So then I spent virtually all day, as I say, they could unzip it for lunch and then put me back in it, depending on how heavy Enik was in the show. Now, sometimes, you know, I could sit for an hour, 2 hours with the thing laying in my lap. Interesting side point, when I was in Japan in the 60s, they took me out to Toho Studios and I got to meet Godzilla. And I thought, that's me, in the rubber suit. He looks out of the neck, and then the head goes on up, and that's operated remote control. But they unzipped the suit and they laid it out. So here, the bottom half of Godzilla. So that's the same thing I did. So I could feel for this guy. So yeah, Enik was a bit trying. I did all of the Sid and Marty Krofft shows, from H.R. Pufnstuf, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, Lidsville, and the one with Martha Ray, the Bugaloos. I did kind of a Buddy Hackett kind of voice for him, you know, for the little firefly and everything. And so they say, you work for Sid and Marty Krofft? Yeah, you know, people. And I said, well, we did Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. Yeah, I remember that name. Yeah, well, you remember H.R. Pufnstuf. Well, the kids watched that, and I said, then we did another one, Land of the Lost. Oh, now that one, yeah, I used to watch that with the kids. I loved that. And there was a lot of adventure in that. And you guys did a lot of special effects. And I said, yeah, we created a lot of things in that show. So Land of the Lost has really held up very well through these years. I mean, it's very watchable today. It isn't really dated like so many of the shows of the 50s and 60s. When I started doing voices, there were about 30 people, and maybe 20 of us did most of the work. And now there's over 4,000 people, according to the union, doing voice work. The only voice I really do now, I still do the voice of Ernie the Elf on the Keebler commercials. Parley Bear, a famous actor, he did it for over 25 years, and he passed away. And he and I were very close friends. So I started doing that about 5 years ago. So I still do Ernie the Elf. He's just a little soft kind of voice. He'll make more cookies for you. So, but that's, I've had a very happy 50 years. And then I did a lot of on-camera. I did on-camera Mark Twain for Disney's Mark Twain's America. I did Douglas MacArthur in War and Remembrance with the hair because I could do his voice, you know. So I've done Big Valley, Wild West, Mission Impossible, Bonanza, 4 years on Red Skelton. So I've done a little of everything.